Welcome, beautiful Sigma ladies. The most unsettling thing about a Sigma female is that she doesn't raise her voice. She raises the truth. You want to rattle evil? Forget pitchforks and fire. Just hand a Sigma female a question and stand back. No panic, no drama. Just razor-sharp precision cloaked in unnerving calm. Here's a brutal fact. Most people avoid asking hard questions not because they're stupid, but because they're smart enough to know the answers will ruin everything they're clinging to. Sigma females, they ask anyway. They don't ask to be polite. They don't ask to be liked. They ask to expose the rot behind the curtain. And evil, whether it's in a corporate boardroom, a fake friendship, or a billion-dollar ideology, absolutely hates that. While others tiptoe around taboos like they're landmines, Sigma females stomp on them like they own the ground. Their questions don't seek permission. They seek cracks in the system. And when they find them, things get awkwardly honest. So buckle up. This isn't your typical girl power pep talk. This is 12 ways Sigma females. Ask the questions evil doesn't want answered. And trust me, these aren't your average "what's your love language" kind of questions. These are the ones that make devils sweat. Number 1. If they call me difficult, who does my ease serve? If they call me difficult, who does my ease serve? This is the kind of question Sigma females ask that makes people squirm. Not because it's rude, but because it hits too close to home. The world loves a woman who's easygoing, who doesn't cause ripples, who bends without breaking and smiles while doing it. But Sigma females aren't here to be convenient, and they're not interested in being a low-maintenance emotional support system just to keep everyone else comfortable. Being labeled difficult isn't about being loud, angry, or rebellious. Sometimes it simply means having boundaries that make selfish people nervous. It means saying no without guilt. It means not laughing at someone's disrespect disguised as a joke. It means not agreeing to things just to keep the peace when that peace is built on her silence. And people don't like that. Because when a woman refuses to make herself small to fit in someone else's comfort zone, they call her hard to deal with. Not because she is, but because she won't be manipulated. A Sigma female doesn't ask for permission to be whole. If you think she's too much, that's often a sign you were hoping for less. Someone easier to manage, easier to impress, easier to mold. But she's not here to play the role of the agreeable woman who's easy to control and easier to dismiss. Here's what stings. When a Sigma female stops trying to be easy, she becomes incredibly powerful. Not in the loud, look-at-me kind of way, but in the quiet, unshakable sense that she no longer needs approval to exist on her own terms. She's not difficult. She's clear. And clarity is uncomfortable for people who rely on confusion to get their way. So the real question isn't, why is she so difficult? It's, who benefits when she's not? Number 2, why is truth always branded as harsh? Why is truth always branded as harsh? That's not a complaint. It's a surgical observation. Sigma females see right through the game. When truth threatens comfort, it gets labeled as aggressive. And when a woman delivers that truth without padding it in fluff or fake politeness, suddenly she's cold, bitter, too blunt, or not very nice. But Sigma females didn't come here to be nice. They came to be real. And that terrifies people who survive on illusion. She doesn't dress the truth up in soft tones just to protect fragile egos. She won't water it down with a smile, or disguise it with passive-aggressive niceties. She speaks it plain because she knows truth isn't supposed to feel good all the time. It's supposed to wake you up. And sometimes waking up feels like a slap, not a hug. Evil relies on sugar-coated half-truths. It needs everything to sound just sweet enough to be swallowed without protest. That's why brutal honesty is seen as impolite. Not because it's wrong, but because it's inconvenient. It forces people to confront what they've been avoiding. Their lies, their denial, their complacency. Sigma females are the glitch in that system. They don't perform emotional babysitting for grown adults afraid of facing reality. Here's the irony. The same people who accuse her of being too harsh will later thank her for being the only one honest enough to say what everyone else was too scared to voice. That's the power of unfiltered truth. It stings now, but it heals later. And Sigma females are never afraid to be the ones who say it first. She's not cruel. She's just not performing softness to protect your comfort while the truth is screaming in the background. She doesn't need you to like the message. She needs you to hear it. Number 3. Why is independence treated like a threat? Why is independence treated like a threat? It's a question that sounds simple, until you realize how deep it cuts. Sigma females don't just enjoy being alone. They own it. They're not detached because they're broken or bitter. They're detached because they've realized something most people haven't. Constant emotional availability and social validation are subtle forms of control. She's not interested in being plugged into groupthink. She doesn't need to be constantly seen, constantly affirmed, or constantly attached to be whole. And that's where the trouble starts. Because society doesn't know what to do with a woman who doesn't need anything from it. Independence is fine when it's superficial, like posting solo travel pictures or claiming self-love while still seeking approval from every corner. But Sigma females practice functional independence. That means she can walk away from toxic people, broken systems, fake communities, and still sleep at night. She doesn't collapse when she's not invited, doesn't chase validation, and doesn't stick around just to be polite. That kind of independence short-circuits power structures because control only works when you believe you need the thing controlling you. The job, the relationship, the label, the praise. A Sigma female doesn't chase those things, she evaluates them. And if they don't add value, she detaches without a meltdown. This is why systems, from corporate culture to social norms, quietly resent women like her, because she doesn't perform dependence. She doesn't join the emotional tug-of-war, doesn't trade freedom for belonging. Her loyalty is earned, not assumed. Her presence is a choice, not a compromise. She's not rebelling just to rebel. She's simply not subscribing to the belief that constant connection equals worth. And when a woman stops apologizing for her autonomy, the world calls her intimidating, but really, it's just afraid of what it can't control. Number 4. What happens if I stop apologizing for my clarity? What happens if I stop apologizing for my clarity? That's not just a question, it's a line in the sand. Sigma females know that in a world addicted to vagueness and emotional performance, clarity is practically a crime, especially when it comes from a woman. Because a woman who sees things for what they are, and says it plainly, is often labeled cold, unkind, too direct, or not understanding enough. But Sigma females? They've had enough of that noise. They see how emotional intelligence, something that should empower, gets twisted into a leash. They're told to be mindful of how they speak, consider how it lands, watch their tone. But all of that is code for, make your truth softer so it doesn't disrupt my illusion. And they're done shrinking their perception just to keep the room comfortable. Clarity isn't cruelty, but it is threatening, because it strips away the gray areas where manipulation hides. It shuts down gaslighting. It makes people choose honesty or convenience, and that's what makes Sigma females so unsettling to the status quo. They don't say maybe when they mean no. They don't dress up red flags with poetic excuses. They don't pretend not to notice when something feels off, and yet for years they've been told to tone it down, to be more gentle, more forgiving, more emotionally aware. But here's the twist. Sigma females are emotionally intelligent. That's why they won't play the game. They see how people use emotion as a weapon to confuse, guilt, and control. They've seen empathy used as a muzzle. They've seen kindness used as bait. So now they choose clarity over comfort, even if it costs them popularity. Because clarity doesn't just reveal situations, it reveals people. And if that makes her too much for some, so be it. She's not here to be digestible. She's here to be real. Number 5. Why do they call it confidence when a man does it, but arrogance when I do? Why do they call it confidence when a man does it, but arrogance when I do? That's not a rhetorical question. It's a direct hit at one of the oldest manipulations in the book. Sigma females don't just notice the double standard. They call it out, stare it down, and refuse to let it shape them. Because they've learned that the moment a woman stops doubting herself, the world suddenly decides she's too much. A man walks into a room and owns it, he's powerful. A Sigma female does the same, and suddenly she's intimidating. A man speaks with conviction, he's a leader. She does it, she's aggressive. It's not just unfair, it's calculated. Because the minute a woman sees herself clearly, without apology, she becomes harder to manipulate. And that's when the world tries to humble her. Not with truth, but with shame. Sigma females see how compliments are often just disguised instructions. You're so humble really means don't get too loud. You're so approachable means stay small. And when she stops performing those traits, when she dares to take up space without softening the edges, the room gets nervous. She doesn't just question the labels, she questions the motive behind them. Who benefits from her shrinking? Who's threatened by her certainty? And why is her power only acceptable when it's convenient for others? Here's the truth. She's not arrogant. She just no longer needs external permission to believe in herself. She's not bossy. She just knows what she wants and isn't waiting for someone else to say it's okay to go after it. That kind of energy doesn't just break norms. It burns down every rule book that was designed to keep her tame. So, no, she won't tone it down. She won't soften her confidence into something palatable. If her self-assurance makes people uncomfortable, that says more about their insecurity than her ego. And she's done apologizing for that. Number 6. Is this kindness or control wearing a mask? Is this kindness or control wearing a mask? That's the kind of question Sigma females don't just ask, they live by. Because they've seen firsthand how manipulation rarely comes with a threat. It comes with a smile. With, I'm just trying to help. With, I only want what's best for you. But if you pay close attention, it's not care. It's control dressed in politeness. And Sigma females don't fall for it. They don't confuse people pleasing with love or approval with safety. They've learned that sometimes the most controlling people are the ones who act the most supportive. The friend who always worries about your choices but really just wants to make them for you. The partner who says, I know you better than you know yourself, as a way to dismiss your instincts. The mentor who offers guidance but bristles when you start thinking for yourself. That's not care. That's a leash. Sigma females pay attention to the tone behind the tone. They catch the subtle guilt trips, the passive-aggressive concern, the fake empathy that only exists when you're doing what they want. And when they feel it, they don't justify it. They don't sugarcoat it. They name it. What unnerves people is that Sigma females don't need confrontation to draw the line. Their silence is enough. They'll go ghost on manipulation mid-sentence. Not to be cruel, but because they know that emotional bait always comes with a hook. And they're done getting reeled in by someone else's idea of kindness. They understand that real care isn't possessive. Real kindness empowers, it doesn't restrict. So if your version of love only exists when they're compliant, if your support disappears the second they think independently, they see it. And they'll walk away without a scene because nothing scares emotional manipulators more than a woman who can't be guilted into staying. Number 7. What if chaos is more honest than conformity? What if chaos is more honest than conformity? That's not rebellion for rebellion's sake. That's a strategic dismantling of the illusion. Sigma females aren't addicted to conflict, but they don't worship order either. They've seen how systems, routines, and societal norms are often nothing more than polished cages. And sometimes, chaos is the only thing loud enough to reveal what those cages are really made of. Most people are trained to flinch at disorder. They cling to structure, even if it's suffocating. They follow the rules, even if the rules are killing them slowly, because structure feels safe. But Sigma females don't fall for that. They ask, safe for whom? Because when a system only works for those in power, order isn't peace, it's control. She understands that evil doesn't just survive in chaos, it fears it, because evil needs silence. It needs everyone to play along, to not question the script, to keep the machine running. It thrives when people mistake obedience for goodness and politeness for morality. But when a Sigma female introduces disruption, when she questions, resists, or simply stops participating, the cracks start to show. And no, she doesn't cause chaos just to watch things burn. She embraces it when it reveals what conformity has been hiding, the lies in the system, the hypocrisy in the culture, the decay beneath the polished surface. She knows that sometimes clarity doesn't come through calm conversations. Sometimes it erupts through breakdowns, confrontations, and uncomfortable truth bombs. Conformity protects the illusion. Chaos reveals the truth. That's why Sigma females are labeled as difficult, disruptive, or unstable. Not because they are, but because they challenge the false sense of stability everyone else is clinging to. They're not afraid of being the catalyst. They'll flip the table if the table was rigged from the start. She's not here to keep the peace. She's here to make sure peace is real. And if that takes a little chaos, she's perfectly fine with that. Number 8. Why do they need me to belong so badly? Why do they need me to belong so badly? That question doesn't come from ego. It comes from clarity. Sigma females aren't afraid of being outsiders. In fact, they've learned that most offers of belonging come with a silent contract. You can stay, as long as you don't challenge the script. That's not connection. That's compliance. And Sigma females don't trade their authenticity for a seat at a table built on unspoken rules and emotional conformity. They've seen how community can become code for control. Join the group, adopt the language, think the same, feel the same, be the same. Belonging becomes a performance. And the moment you stop clapping on cue, the applause turns into silence. Or worse, shame. But Sigma females don't fear that shift. They expect it. Because they know that most groups don't love people. They love obedience. What unsettles people is that she doesn't chase inclusion. She evaluates it. She asks, what am I being asked to sacrifice to be accepted here? And if the answer is her voice, her instincts, or her standards, she's out. Quietly, completely. No announcement, no resentment, just gone. Because she knows that real belonging doesn't require self-erasure. That's why her absence feels so loud. Because she doesn't leave for drama. She leaves for truth. And in doing so, she exposes just how conditional the whole system really was. Her refusal to be emotionally bribed by belonging threatens more than just social circles. It threatens entire structures that depend on consensus to maintain their illusion of legitimacy. She doesn't need to be liked to feel valid. She doesn't need groupthink to feel safe, and that makes her ungovernable. So when they say, we want you to be part of this, she listens carefully. If what they really mean is, we want you to comply, then her answer is already no. Because if she has to abandon herself to belong, she'd rather walk alone, free. Number 9. What's the real reason behind their need to fix me? What's the real reason behind their need to fix me? That's not self-pity, it's precision. Sigma females know that when people rush to help without being asked, it's not always compassion. Sometimes it's a need for control wrapped in a self-righteous bow. And she's not flattered by the savior complex, she's dissecting it. She's learned that unsolicited advice often isn't about her at all. It's about the other person's discomfort with her not fitting their mold. When she doesn't react the way they expect, when she's not visibly struggling, when she doesn't crave guidance or approval, they start fidgeting. So they offer to fix her, not to serve her, but to feel useful, to assert emotional dominance, to be the rescuer in a story she never asked them to write. Sigma females know the difference between help and interference. Real support empowers. False support is invasive. The difference is consent. The difference is respect. People don't like that she sees this so clearly, because it exposes their intentions. When she questions the fixers, it hits a nerve, especially those whose identity is built on being the healer, the mentor, the wise one. If she doesn't need saving, where does that leave them? That's the part they never want to admit, that sometimes they need her to be broken just to feel whole. But she doesn't need fixing, she needs space. Space to think, to breathe, to move, without being treated like a project. And if someone's help comes with strings, expectations, or an unspoken hierarchy, she'll cut the cord and keep walking. Not because she's ungrateful, but because she's not interested in being a character in someone else's redemption arc. She's not cold, she's clear. And clarity scares those who confuse control with kindness. Number 10. Who benefits if I stay small? Who benefits if I stay small? That question isn't for drama, it's for excavation. Sigma females aren't interested in surface-level rebellion. They go straight to the source. They know that every time they're told to shrink, soften, or step back, it's not just random discomfort. Someone is gaining from their suppression, and they want to know exactly who. This question is their scalpel. Because manipulation isn't always loud. Sometimes it's dressed as encouragement. Don't aim too high, just be grateful. Or as concern. Are you sure you're not being too ambitious? But Sigma females don't just hear the words. They follow the power trail behind them. They ask, if I stay quiet, who keeps the spotlight? If I burn out doing everything for everyone, who gets to relax? If I doubt myself, who stays in control? They know their silence isn't just a loss. It's someone else's gain. That's why people so often tell powerful women to be humble. Not because humility is noble, but because it makes them easier to manage. It's why they're praised for being low maintenance, because that means they won't ask for more. It's why boundaries are called selfish, because it stops the emotional freeloading. And Sigma females are done with that. They don't respond with rage. They respond with refusal. Not passive-aggressive, not loud, just unavailable to being used. And that refusal sends shockwaves, because it disrupts a hidden economy built on their exhaustion and emotional labor. She's not just protecting her time or energy. She's protecting her power. By no longer donating it to systems, people, or roles that thrive off her staying small. And once she sees who benefits from her playing small, she stops apologizing for playing big. She's not asking for permission anymore. She's pulling receipts. Number 11. Why is outrage more accepted than truth? Why is outrage more accepted than truth? It's not a complaint. It's a diagnosis. Sigma females notice that in today's world, the louder you yell, the more right you seem. But the moment you speak a calm, clear truth, especially one that cuts through the noise, people flinch, because truth doesn't scream, it doesn't perform, it doesn't ask for applause, and that makes it threatening in a culture addicted to drama. Sigma females have watched how outrage gets rewarded. People go viral not for being accurate, but for being emotional. Platforms boost anger, not insight, and opinions, no matter how reckless, get traction if they're loud enough. But honesty? That makes people uncomfortable, especially when it's not sugar-coated, not emotional, and not available for debate. And she knows. When outrage is trending, truth becomes the enemy. She understands that emotional chaos is a perfect distraction. Outrage gets people riled up, divided, easy to steer. But truth, real, inconvenient, sober truth, unplugs the performance. It forces people to stop reacting and start reflecting. And reflection? That's slow, that's personal, that's uncomfortable. Most people would rather fight a straw man than face a mirror. What makes Sigma females dangerous is that they don't shout. They cut through. They don't need to go viral to be heard. Their truth doesn't rely on volume. It relies on clarity. And clarity isn't fun to argue with because it doesn't take the bait. It doesn't spiral. It just stands. She sees how evil thrives in noise, in confusion, in reaction, in constant overstimulation. Truth is too still, too clean. That's why society labels her cold, harsh, or too serious. Because she doesn't play the outrage game. She's not here to perform emotion. She's here to expose the architecture beneath it. And when she speaks, even quietly, the room shifts. Because people can ignore shouting, but they can't ignore signal. Number 12. Why is my silence so threatening? Why is my silence so threatening? It's a question Sigma females don't ask for reassurance. They ask it like a warning. Because they know their silence doesn't represent weakness, shyness, or passivity. It represents control. And in a world that profits off emotional access, her refusal to be fully seen, read, or predicted becomes an act of quiet defiance. People don't fear her words. They fear what she's not saying. They don't fear her presence. They fear what it means when she doesn't perform for attention or approval. Her silence forces others to sit with themselves without distraction or validation. It creates space. And in that space, people are confronted with their own insecurities, projections, and powerlessness. That's why silence from a Sigma female isn't neutral. It's disruptive. She knows that society is built on a kind of emotional surveillance. Overshare to be accepted, confess to be trusted, display vulnerability to be deemed human. But she opts out. Not because she's cold or distant, but because she's aware of how emotional transparency is often demanded as a form of control. The more you reveal, the easier you are to influence, guilt, or manipulate. She won't hand over that blueprint. What unsettles people is that they can't decode her. She doesn't perform her pain. She doesn't explain her peace. She doesn't narrate her process for the comfort of others. And that makes her powerful in a way that can't be leveraged. Because mystery, in her case, isn't a lack of clarity. It's a boundary. People try to provoke her, get reactions, push her to open up. But what they're really trying to do is manage her. Because silence like hers isn't absence. It's presence, sharpened, deliberate, and fully sovereign. She doesn't need to be loud to be heard. Her silence says everything, especially to those who've built entire personas around being understood, liked, or praised. And that's why her quiet is mistaken for rebellion, because it is. The Sigma female doesn't ask questions to provoke. She asks them to expose, to cut through the noise, to see what's hiding behind the masks people wear and the systems they serve. Her questions aren't casual. They're confrontational in the most elegant way. They don't scream, they slice. And in a world where obedience is celebrated and truth is dressed in PR, she refuses both costumes. She isn't dangerous because she's aggressive. She's dangerous because she's aware. Because she doesn't need permission to think, to challenge, or to walk away. Her power isn't in how much she says, it's in what she refuses to say. She doesn't ask for a seat at the table. She questions who built it, who it excludes, and why everyone's still pretending it's solid. Her rebellion isn't always loud. It's in her stillness, her discernment, her unwillingness to play along just to be palatable. And that's exactly why she's a threat to anything or anyone built on illusion. So when a Sigma female starts asking the questions evil doesn't want answered, it's not a performance. It's a reckoning, and no amount of applause, outrage, or pretense can stop her from getting to the truth, because she never needed the noise. She is the signal. If this hit a nerve or lit a fire, don't just scroll away. Subscribe to the channel for more unapologetic, no-fluff breakdowns like this one. Like if you felt seen. Comment if you've asked these questions yourself, or if you're ready to start. And share this with someone who's done playing small and wants the truth, not the performance. This isn't just content, it's a wake-up call. Stay sharp, stay sovereign. See you in the next one.